We recognise the Kaurna people as the custodians of the lands and waters of the Adelaide region and pay our respects to elders past and present. We acknowledge and respect the Kaurna people's cultural, spiritual, physical and emotional connection with their land, waters and community, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and First Nations people. Welcome back to Amy and. I'm Amy Matthews and I'm here today with Peyton Hogan.
Hello.
And Justina Ashman.
Hi.
And we are interviewing our Book of the Month authors today. So Mikaela Clements and Onjuli Datta. Now, we had a really great conversation. This is where you find out we record these intros to the interviews after we do the interviews. Because when you start watching our interview with Mick and Onj, you will see that Justina pops in partway into the interview. But she's with us, as you can see. We've all had the flu. We all caught influenza A recently, and it's been a long, long few weeks of recovery. So forgive us if we're a little bit looser and more coffee than normally.
It's definitely the flu that made me late.
Definitely.
I'm never late normally,
Absolutely.
ever.
No, it just affects time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone lives time differently when they have the flu. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Peyton to introduce our guests and Justina to tell you a little bit about the book. As usual, we only include books we love, but we particularly really loved our Halloween book this month.
It's so good. So Mikaela Clements and Onjuli Datta are a married literary power couple currently based in Berlin, which is really cool. They're going to be video calling in from Berlin. Their first co-authored novel, The View Was Exhausting, was a Goop and Good Housekeeping book club pick. Justina's holding it up. It looks very cool. And it was named a perfect summer read by Vogue. Their second co-authored novel, which is the one we'll be discussing today, is Feast While You Can, which was described in the New York Times as an exciting new hybrid horror romance novel in which queer desire is the cure, not the curse, and it will satiate readers who have subsisted for too long on the crumbs of representation. And now over to Justina with the blurb.
There is a monster inside of Angelina Sicko. All she wants is to walk her mongrel dog, hold court with her brother in their local dive bar, and bait hot queer women to her sleepy conservative hometown, Caden's. The problem is, so does the monster. It wants what Angelina has done. It wants what she's going to do. It wants to eat her whole life, and every version of every future she might have with it. Until it possessed her, the famous monster of Caden's lived deep in a pit inside the mountain. But on the night that Angelina runs into her brother's ex, the sternly handsome Jagvi, the monster rises hungry and ready to eat. Its claws comb through her private thoughts, her most intimate and traumatic memories. Only Jagvi's touch repels it, but the monster feasts on all the mess that makes up a life, and Angelina Sicko's has never looked tastier. What will Angelina do to protect her future, and just how much will it cost her? Oh.
So that is, I mean, it is a pretty great horror novel.
It's so good.
I have to say. So, guys, we're going to interview Mick and Onj now, and then we'll join you at the end to talk about book club next week. So here they are, Mick and Onj. This moment. There we go. We haven't yet done that, but it's going to happen one day. I was going to start off like thinking about horror because we're doing horror month for October, obviously, because it's Halloween. And one thing I've always been fascinated about with horror is that it's so tied to realism so that you can sell the time and place and really buy into the kind of affective moment. And I noticed that even though it seemed really clear to me that the book was set in Italy, that online, when I look up reviews, and even there was the author, KJ Charles, was on Goodreads reviewing your book and said that they couldn't work out where the book was set, that it was seemed to have like a hillbilly vibe as well as having this old Europe vibe. And I thought actually that is true that when I read it, I was a little, it was uncanny enough. It felt like a kind of not real place, even as it felt really grounded. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the setting of the book and why it's set where it's set and how the setting operates.
Yeah, I'm just going to close our window
Go
because
for
I have
it.
no wondering how going to work out there, and I think it's going to. But Mick, you go ahead.
It's an element of Berlin for the podcast. Um, yeah, the setting was an issue for us. It was kind of interesting. It was normally, I think, when like a book comes along and an idea for a book comes along, we feel like the setting comes pretty much hand in hand with it because of exactly what you're talking about. You want that realism, you want that vibrancy, you want the reader to feel really rooted in the place in the world where it is taking place. And with Feast, that just wasn't happening. And we it was weird because we had the picture of the small town, Caden's, very clearly in our head, but we had no idea where this town was. And Anj and I kind of have sometimes a tricky approach to setting anyway, because we're obviously writing for very different perspectives. I'm from Australia, but I left Australia when I was like 20 and kind of haven't been back as an adult. Anj grew up in the UK. We now both live in Germany, where we've been here for nearly a decade, but it's also obviously you always feel a little bit like an outsider in some senses. So we don't have a place that naturally felt right for us to write about with this kind of intimacy. And then I think we sort of like half worried about it for a few days. And then we were like, maybe this is a feature, not a bug. And what we started really thinking about was leaning into the idea that this is a small town that should feel familiar to our readers. It should feel like somewhere that you might have been or driven through, or maybe you've come from somewhere like it yourself. And then it should feel just a tiny bit off.
Mm.
And that tiny bit offness, especially for the horror genre, was really important because what we wanted was to have you just slightly off balance from the very beginning of the book, even before anything supernatural has happened. Like you're going down a staircase and you've missed a stair and you're okay, but like you've kind of reached out to grab onto the banisters and you're, you know, holding yourself in the book in that sense. And so, yeah, it's been really fun to see readers' reactions to it and to see readers kind of picking up on different elements of it. Italy was a massive inspiration, and we went to a place in Italy that was really, really wonderful for thinking about the place of the world of the book and stuff like that. But we also thought about America and the kind of the Appalachians. We read folklore from India. I thought a lot about the kind of small country towns in Australia that I grew up visiting. My mum's family is all from Clare in South Australia, so that was a big part of my childhood. And then also like it's been really interesting. Like I saw one reader recently who was like, it is 100% set in Romania.
Oh,
And
well, because it did feel really Australian to me. And like we're from South Australia, it did feel that. But also, I got the appellation. Like it is really
Yeah.
interesting. It's like infused with all those things.
I
Mm.
think the other thing that's interesting about it now looking back is that we were writing it during lockdown and we were kind of trapped in one apartment. And I think the interesting thing about lockdown was like every apartment becomes this like little island in the world
Mm.
that is kind of situated like we were in Berlin, we knew where we were, but I remember like going out to the shops after I hadn't left the house in like 10 days and being like, whoa, there's people speaking German on the streets. How weird. Oh yeah, because we were in Germany and we kind of forgot about the outside world completely. And in a way, that's kind of how this town functions as well. And also how the monster that we wrote functions is that it kind of creates this island of a town that does exist in a geographical location in the world, but at the same time is its very own kind of isolated place where nasty things can happen.
Mm.
So I think that was also part of the inspiration for the vagueness of it. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. It really had the feeling of, I mean, I'm from Adelaide, which isn't a huge city, but even when you go through small towns and you just wonder what everyone's life is like there, like such a big city perspective to have when you're used to what you're used to, but you just wonder what everyone does there every day. And I felt
Yeah,
that kind of,
like when we went to Italy, we had this guide who was with us for the day. It was this town called Matera, and it's actually a really cool town because it's one of the last places in Europe that people were still like living in caves in the 20th century.
Wow.
yeah.
So it has this big history of caves and cave churches, and we went to this really famous cave from like the medieval ages called the Crypt of Original Sin, which was one of the big inspirations for the cave where our monster lives. which is on our main character's kind of family farm in the novel. But we were also kind of asking him, hey, what did you do here when you were a teenager? And he was like, oh, some caves are great to smoke weed in. We were like, yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, it's fun to go to a place that's so beautiful and mystical and has such a rich history, but also be like, hey, what do the teenagers do when they hang out here? And like, where do
Yeah.
you drink when you're bored on a Saturday night? And we really wanted to bring those two things in, this kind of like old world fantasy, like sinister, dark, almost semi-religious, but also just sort of like more ancient than religion. Um,
Mm,
supernatural element, but then also this very real, okay, our main character, Angelina, what is her job? I think she works in a bar. I think that
Yeah.
would be fun. And maybe she
yeah.
will decide being in a call center and we can do something fun with that.
This is a
Yeah.
good segue to a question that I wrote down. Thinking of like small towns and particularly the two characters' very different experiences with that town and perspectives on it. And it made me think about, a lot of us struggle to discern when we're living in a bubble and limiting our potential, or if where we are is exactly where we're meant to be. And you're two people who have obviously traveled pretty widely and you've come from different places. And now you've written about this small town that people either love or hate or both. How do we work out when it's right to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, like Jagvi, or where we should stay put and celebrate where we are and maybe try to make it better, like Angelina?
That's such a good question.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of fun with that kind of, hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Justina.
Justina.
Hello. So sorry. I totally misread the time the meeting was supposed to be. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's been like one of those months. Everyone's got the plague.
Apologies. Oh my gosh. So
You made it.
professional. Sorry.
Shall I keep going?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
sorry.
for
I
it.
didn't mean to interrupt.
So
you
we
guys.
just
No,
asked
no
them
worries.
like a big, deep question around how do we know if we're supposed to stay or go? Please be our mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the thing that we were really excited to do with Jagvi and Angelina was to make them very similar but also very different. So we knew for our first book, The View Was Exhausting, we had written this romance that was about two people who are very different. One is a kind of actress with Indian heritage, and one is a white man. The book was a lot about the tension between them and the kind of different privileges they had and things like that. And for our second novel, we kind of wanted to do something similar in terms of exploring different privileges and the way that kind of social background can play into a relationship. But we were like, let's make it more of a challenge. And so Jagvi and Angelina on paper are actually very similar. They're both mixed race, they're both queer, they're both from the same small town. But actually, when it plays out for them, they're very different. Um, and so, yeah, like you say, Jagvi is kind of desperate to leave town. I think she also has a slightly wealthier background, so she has more opportunities to do so. She's much more outwardly queer than Angelina is. She's very, very butch, whereas Angelina is much more feminine, is able to pass, and Angelina is very situated in the town. She has a big family there, no prospects outside of it. And then at the same time, I think Angelina has kind of learned a survival mode, which is all about getting people on her side and being liked and being familiar to people and being able to make fun of herself before they will make fun of her. For her, that's safety. And whereas for Jagvi, I think she has much more of an armor up around her. And I think we had a lot of fun playing with that differential, especially when it came to the monster as well. Because I think when the monster shows up, they react in much a similar way. Jagby is very defensive and very ready to fight it and ready to do what they need to do to get away from it. Whereas Angelina is very like, I think I can work with this monster. Like me. I think I've got it eating out of the palm of my hand. And then the crucial thing is that obviously they're both wrong. Like both of their approaches are not going to work. And what they actually have to do is adjust a little bit to each other. And we always say the perfect way to write a romance is to think about you have these two puzzle pieces that are not quite finished yet, and then they have to sort of mold into each other. And each person needs to move a little bit towards the other one and change a little bit and kind of accept the other one's point of view. So I guess the answer to the question is I don't know if there is a specific, either you go the Jackie way or you go the Angelina way. I think you kind of have to find a middle ground. either when you were dealing with your like small town or your parents, or also with like the demonic monster from the cave chasing you around.
And I really hope I do have to deal with a demonic monster
Yeah,
today.
I know.
So...
Life would be more
More
interesting.
preferable than small town bigger. So
Yeah, we're going to start wandering into crevices and cliff
Yeah.
faces.
That's the plan for October. On the monster, when you start planning the book, like this is two questions running into each other now. One is around collaborative writing, I guess, and one is around the actual book. Like, do you spend a lot of time talking it through, or how much are you working on the page? Like, is there much like deciding what the monster is together before you start, or does one of you start writing it out and the other one joins in on the page? Like, how does it work?
In general, our collaborative process is like both. Like we talk about it all the time. It's like it's obsessive. I mean, I think there's a pretty common conception, and maybe it's also very true that writing is quite a lonely profession. It's sort of for most people, it's you alone with a laptop. I feel extremely lucky that I don't have to do that because even if nobody else was ever interested in one of our books, even if like it never got published or something like that, for the space that we are writing it and for the space that we are living in it, Anj and I are like obsessed with our novel, and it becomes like it's like a fandom of two, or it's like we have this really messy friend group that we can't stop gossiping about. So like we go out to dinner and we're like, oh, what do you think she would do if blah 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 blah? Or we, like we're constantly talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And then when we write, it's much more, okay, back and forth. And the other one, like we sometimes we'll both be writing, so it's necessarily not chronological. So we kind of have an idea of where the other one is going. We don't tend to do like big surprises. There was a twist in our first book review where Onj suggested it, and I was like, absolutely not. No, we're not doing that. And then she basically argued me into it over the course of about a month. But in general, we try not to be like, aha, I've killed a character at the end of this page. You weren't expecting that, were you? But the monster was kind of an interesting character because when we first wrote Feast for, I want to say even like the first two full drafts, the monster was almost completely silent. And it was this very like, it possessed Angelina. It was still kind of called the thing behind Angelina, but it was this very like,
it was just a presence.
it was, yeah, a kind of horrible presence. And it was not quite working for various ways. One was that, like, I think the shock appeal of its appearance the first time was kind of scary. But after that, it was like, well, here's this thing and it's doing the same thing that it's done before. And I think when you're writing horror, you really have to keep, when you're writing anything, you have to keep upping the stakes. You can't have the same dangerous situation over and over again because the reader is like, yeah, I've had that one. I have
Yeah.
got a little inoculation of fear against that one, and now you're not going to freak me out. You have to find a new way to make it scary. And then also because the way that the monster works and the way that the kind of folklore of this town works is quite complex, it was really hard to show what the monster was doing or, kind of to make it the plot function in a way that wasn't just like buckets of exposition, basically. And then I think we were actually in, do you remember where we were? Were we in Italy? I really remember walking down that hill.
Yeah, it was Lake Como.
Yeah. Um, and we were suddenly like, hey, what if the monster was chatty? Like, what if it like talked to her? And then I wrote that first scene and it was literally like,
Yeah, I remember I was like, okay, I can't really picture what that would be like, but like, let's give it a shot. And then Mick wrote this scene, and it's Angelina is working a shift in the bar, and the monster appears. I'm trying not to give too many like spoilery details, but
We could just put a warning at the start.
but it starts talking to her for the first time, and I was kind of expecting it to be this sort of like I am a monster and I'm here, and instead Mick kind of made it be like, hey baby girl, like what's going on? And I was like, oh, it's sexy.
Yeah.
And
As a result, everyone has a crush on the monster, like
exactly.
immediately.
Much scarier for being sexy. I think like because when it's just dangerous, then it's kind of easy to be like, okay, well, this is a dangerous thing and I'm going to fight it and I will fight it like I fought every other thing in my life. But when it's seductive and it knows how to push her buttons and it knows how to kind of get to her and it kind of can see her desires, the way she wants to be treated by other people and manipulate that and use that, that's so much harder to resist. And
Mm.
so I was like, both this is so exciting to read because it's so sexy and interesting, but also this is so much scarier than it was before.
Yeah.
And that was one of those times where Mick did surprise me, and then I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this for the whole book. I love it. And then it just gets that kind of relationship of this monster almost being like a cat that's like playing with a mouse with Angelina. We really like pushed that as far as it could go, I think.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
funniest thing about it was after two drafts of like complete silence, the monster was so easy to write.
Yeah.
It was really like I have some things to say. Like, please let me let it out. It was like
I know I wanted to say there's something super interesting there about the intersections between like desire and danger, and how that fear, when it's entangled with desire, is so fascinating, because sometimes your own desires can be so scary, and at the same time that link between the like sexuality and the fear, I don't know, I just found that very fascinating to read.
It was
Yeah.
perfect how you described the monster as the depression brain, because it makes me think about how the depression brain can be so seductive. Like
Mhm.
it feels so true and so reliable, and it kind of feels like a friend in that way. So I really felt scared for Angelina reading this book.
Yeah, I think depression brain can be very like convincing, right? Because it feels like so close to you and it's also, generally trying to offer up solutions and the easiest solutions that it can think of. And I think that was also another big inspiration for this voice that really sits kind of in the back of your skull, being like, hey, what
Mm.
if you did this? And part of you is aware that it's a bad idea, but part of you is like, that does sound good though.
Um, on the collaborative writing process, if I ever ask a question that you've already answered, please feel free to just openly berate me. But how did you then find that cohesiveness in the character voice? Because it's such a strong and compelling voice. And the idea of writing that, like co-writing that voice, is so like I can't even imagine how you managed to mesh that together.
Thank you. That's really nice.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is we've been writing together just for a really long time. Anj and I met when I was 20 and she was 19, and we pretty much started writing together like from that point onwards. So our writing styles really grew up around each other. Like, I think like when you read, occasionally we'll write something separate, like usually like a short story or something. And if you read that, you would be like, oh yeah, this is familiar. It's a little bit different, but it's not that different. So I don't know if there was actually like luckily we mostly just kind of step back into this voice that feels very natural and familiar to occupy. And then the other thing we do is we edit like crazy. Like I really love editing. My favorite draft of a book is always the second draft, where it's like things are still sort of exciting and new, but also you know where you're going. And you're like, I know this character now, I know what she would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the other thing is that Angelina for us, we were so sure and clear what we wanted her to be and how we wanted her to be. I think we were immediately right from the start of writing this novel, like we want a brat.
Yeah.
We want a little sister. We want her to be brave, but also not in a kind of I'm going to step up to you and fight you kind of way. We want her to be really good with her words. We want her to be a little bit sort of a people pleaser in a way where she knows how to work a crowd. We want her to have been popular in high school, but now a little bit more of a burnout. And we want her to be queer, but in a way that she's not entirely comfortable with, in a way that she hasn't completely figured out yet. And I think all of those things would kind of like, it was like we already had this kind of picture in our heads of what this character was going to be like. And because we were so clear on it, by the time she actually showed up and started talking, I remember like I think the first few pages that we wrote together was just like a few nights in the summer where we are both like, should we just like say fuck it and start writing this thing? And it came spilling out so fast, and we both started writing all at once. And I think one of the first things I wrote was her trying to decide what name to give her dog. And she's like, oh, it's such a stupid dog. I should give it. And we were both like, yeah, that fits. That makes so much sense. works for her. And so from then on, we were like, everything just kind of fell into place quite easily.
It's
And the same
amazing.
with Jagvi, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how not only how well you write together, like you've just explained, but also that you're also able to make genre leaps together. Like you wrote
Mm.
something so different for your debut novel. I wanted to ask you what that was like making that leap. Was that intentional? Um, and even though the books on the surface are quite different, is there anything that you can think of that's actually quite similar across the two?
Yeah, we're both just, I think the main thing is we're really omnivorous readers. Like there's nothing that I won't read, and I have books that I love in almost every genre that I can think of. And so the idea of having to stick to one genre feels really unfair. Like it's like I'm a little kid, like at the bank, like, no, but I want all of it. Like the fun rom-com, and I want to do the magic, and I want maybe I'll do a gritty realism at some point as well, you know? So we were lucky in that we had like very supportive publishing team around us, our editors and our agents. They were kind of like, okay, let's do it. And then in terms of actually like making the switch, it felt quite natural. Like it felt like it was the story that we wanted to tell. I have less experience in horror than Anj has always been a big horror fan. And I'm like a small baby who starts crying when I'm afraid. So I went on like a crash course and read like a bunch of kind of classics of the genre before we started writing as a kind of like magpie-esque, how do people do this? What are the beats? What are the tropes that you hit? And I gave myself really horrible dreams for a
Yeah,
couple
So,
of
one
months.
so
thing we
which books? Sorry to interrupt, but what kind of books were they?
The big one was It by Stephen King.
Yeah.
That was like, and I think you can see
yeah, there's definitely influences.
there's a dairy influence in Cadence for sure. What were the other ones?
We read a lot of Henry James, I think.
Oh yeah.
Ah, yeah, okay, I can get that. That's where that uncanny feeling is coming from. That
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
spooky
exactly.
feeling.
And
Yeah.
then we love Mariana Enriquez
Mm.
because she's very good at doing modern day horror. She's very good at doing horror that's situated in the real world.
And she does also Our Share of Night, which is an incredible book, has like it does gore in a way that is like so much more frightening than like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or whatever, like the big gory
Yeah.
movie.
Oh.
It's really and that was really like so explicit but also so cleverly done. Like, yeah, I think she's wonderful.
Yeah.
They were the big
I'm
ones.
trying to remember. Oh, yeah. So I was going to say is I think one thing we got really obsessed with while we were reading so widely was how to write a jump scare and how to make a jump scare happen when you don't have a camera or like violin sound effects or like a flashing light or like a slamming door and you've really just got the words on the page. And we kind of realized it's this kind of slow building tension. And so there's a scene very early on which was our kind of big jump scare moment. Which yeah, I won't go into it.
No spoilers.
Spoilers.
Yeah, but I think interestingly, that kind of became a bit of an inspiration for the whole novel because the whole novel really is about kind of like slow building tension, or even sometimes very fast accelerated tension that suddenly reaches one pitch and then a new thing happens. And so we tried to kind of like use that jump scare model throughout the whole novel to keep it kind of compelling as
Yeah.
well.
And then in terms of like similarities between our books, I think one thing is at least up until now, and at least for the foreseeable, we love a love story. There will always be like there's a massive obviously our first novel was a rom-com, so there's a big love story there. There's a big love story in Feast. Some people are like it's more of a horror novel, and some people are like it's more of a romance novel. And for me, they feel so intrinsically connected that you can't pull them apart.
Agree.
And then project that we're writing next also has a big love story.
Yeah, I think I'm not the first person to say this, but I think horror and romance actually have a huge amount in common because they are really all about asking yourself, like, what are you living for? What are you willing to die for? What would you give for the things you want? And is it too much? Like, are you giving too much for the things you want, or are you not giving enough? I think they're both very like confrontational genres in their own way that ask a lot of people. And I think that's why we're drawn to both of them. And I felt that similarity between these two novels as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because they're almost like sorry to cut you off. I'll cut off. that when going back to your puzzle piece idea of the having to change the puzzle piece, horror and romance both demand that change, right? You can't
Mm.
stay the same shape at the end as you are at the beginning.
Yeah, our friend Julia Armfield said once, I think horror and romance are so similar because they're both essentially about death, which I
Yeah,
think is like,
I
I
think
think
it's
it's really,
true.
what is your life for? Like, what are you going to do with it? Like, why does it matter that you only have a certain amount of time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. I was just going to ask about whether that romance connection helped you do that slippage between genres a bit easier, because I know sometimes there's a hesitance around if you, um, if you're shelved in one section, how will people find your book in another section? But that connecting love theme allows them to sort of sit together.
Yeah, I think like the main thing is that both books still just feel very true to us. It doesn't
Mm.
feel like with one we were playing a role and with the other one we were like,
Yeah.
oh, now we're really ourselves. I think both ones, especially when we were writing them, felt like fully us doing exactly what we wanted to do. And I think that's really important. I think with Feast we really were just indulging ourselves to the max in every single way, be it in the kind of descriptions of the town that we wanted to write, be it in these like characters that we both became obsessed with, be it in these like kind of very extravagant sex scenes that we wanted to write. I think we just really just leaned into exactly what we wanted to do. And I think that's kind of the most important thing as writers, to just be really true to what you're obsessed with.
I think that indulgence comes across in like the best possible way. And I don't know, I'm thinking back to what you were saying about the connections between romance and horror. I mean, in some ways, both of them are about indulging these like
Mhm.
very instinctual parts of yourself. And that's,
Mhm.
yeah, that definitely
Yeah,
comes
it's like
through.
staring into the abyss in a way, but also just kind of like free falling into
Yeah.
it.
What is it like? So like we're talking about queerness as well, queer sexuality. What's it like to craft horror as queer people for queer people versus consuming horror crafted by and for straight folks, where often queerness is one of the anxieties that's at play in them?
Yeah, we're at an interesting moment. Hey, I feel like there's been a pivot in the last, 5, 10 years. Sort of, Anj just mentioned Julia Armfield. Obviously, she writes amazing queer horror. You also have people like Alison Rumfitt or Gretchen. Oh, I'm blanking on her last name. Do you know who
Oh,
wrote
Manhunt.
Manhunt?
Yeah.
yeah. It's on my Kindle and I don't have my Kindle on me.
Ah,
But like Cuckoo as well is another one, like those
Yeah,
kinds of books.
that
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a moment where queerness is presented in horror as like the I guess as the like the driving force rather than the villain. Or like, and it's not to say that I don't really like believe in this thing of like you can never have queer villains because that's like bad representation or whatever. It's like no, like why not? Fun.
Yeah, we need
Like, why
diverse.
But I think it's very clear that for like a really long time, when horror was mostly made by kind of like, let's say like dominant cultural narratives, basically, then it was the things that are other. So, the things that are different from us, different from that white, straight, cisgender sort of normativity. Those are the things that are really frightening. And obviously, historically, if we look at the force that has been deeply frightening, it is the white cisgender
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm.
normativity
Which
sort of
is
thing.
what's interesting about your demon there too, because there's a like when I was reading it, I kept thinking of it, it's almost like the abuser, right? Like it's like the dominant abuser figure.
Mhm.
So it's almost like the demon. And I know I've read interviews with you guys where you say that the sexiness of the demon, people read whatever genre they like, whatever gender they find sexy, right? They
Yeah,
ascribe to the demon. And partly
yeah,
that's the threat of the abuser.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I think so. And then I think the other side of the coin there is that what we really wanted to do was find ways where like the queerness of our main characters became one of their kind of strongest assets in a way. And the most kind of clear element of that is the fact that whenever Jagvi and Angelina touch each other while Angelina is being possessed, it kind of pushes the monster out of Angelina's body.
Mm.
And it's very explicitly physical touch that has to do it. And originally, when we came up with that, we were like, we need a mechanism that is a way to get rid of the monster easily. Ideally, it should be something to do with Jagvi. And when we realized it was touch, we were like, oh, yeah, we can make this really hot too.
Oh, yeah.
The way it plays out is kind of beautiful because it means that this kind of like queer touch and queer kind of longing and sex becomes this very strong repellent to this kind of abusive presence in Angelina's life. And that honestly, I really love that that's part of the novel.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I think
beautiful.
there's an element of obviously like queerness, and in the case of Feast, it's like explicitly lesbianism is like what's going to save you. I think it's also a little bit, it's also going to doom you. Like, not with like, again, not trying to go into spoilers, but it's a horror novel and the ending is complicated. And I think we wanted to be like, we wanted to like carve to that really terrible, beautiful strain of realism that runs through horror, where it's like, something can save you, but only a certain amount, maybe. And queerness and lesbianism is the sort of like the beating heart of the book. And it's going to fix some things and it's not going to fix everything.
I really want someone to do like a comparative essay between your book and Love Lies Bleeding because I love them both so much and they're very similar in that way and that complexity and the ending. It's like, again, spoilers. It's like a happy ending, but with a question mark.
Reviews that love the ending and some reviews that are like, oh my God, what just happened?
Some people hate it. Sometimes people are like, how could you do that? And I'm like, yeah, it's a horror novel, man.
Those people are wrong.
When I think about that ending, it doesn't sound that bad to me. And I think that's kind of part of the trick of it. I mean, yeah, the novel is also about codependency, which I think is quite a common thing in queer relationships for many.
How dare you?
I think that's such an interesting comparison. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, like we wrote it in lockdown. We were like kind of trapped in one house together. It was just the two of us. It was like the entire universe was just us and our relationship. And so in a way, writing this big novel about codependency makes a lot of sense.
We know so much about you now. I'm kidding.
I was going to say, Peyton, that connection with Love Lies Bleeding is so interesting to me because I remember seeing criticisms of that film about their relationship being like not healthy or being toxic. And I was like, and what's wrong with that? I was like, it's such a compelling story when you allow all this complexity into a queer relationship rather than trying to make it, what's the word? Almost like didactic in being like, this is a model for a healthy relationship. It's like, no, allow it to be messy and complicated.
Yeah, I mean, like there are self-help books, but there are also books that are not about telling you how to live your life or modeling the best way. And I think those ones are the more interesting ones.
Yeah.
There's like a tendency, there's like a kind of anxiety, and maybe it's a little bit like also like more pronounced in kind of communities where we are like worried about abuse and we're maybe a little bit more like tuned into ideas like that, where it's like, but don't worry, these characters are really good. And like I understand that impulse and I kind of empathize with it, but I do find it like not hugely interesting if like characters start speaking in sort of like pitch perfect therapy like exercises of, you know, like
and it's
taking
not terribly sexy either. Like something about the messy imperfection is really hot.
Exactly. Right? The only person who uses therapy speak in Feast Where You Can is the monster. The monster is interested in therapy, and it's really like, what I want. I'll try this for a little while.
The other reason why I think it works so well is because one of Jagvi's anxieties is that she's a bad person. And so I like that at the end, it's kind of like, well, maybe everyone is just kind of bad and kind of crappy. And especially at the moment, it feels very timely because there's so much perfectionism. And I really like any kind of book that bucks up against that. And I feel like queer fiction historically was always really messy like that, especially when it was for queer people and it wasn't opened up to a general audience. So now we've got the messy stuff for a general audience, which is great.
Yeah, I think Jagvi's so interesting because I think she's very concerned with her own kind of moral worth. And I think she doesn't entirely realize that a lot of that is internalized homophobia. I think she is kind of focused on kind of doing the best for herself and other people, being as strong as possible, doing things like not getting into a relationship with Angelina because she doesn't want to hurt anybody, being very guarded against the town because that's what keeps her safe. She has a bit of a like, I don't care what other people think attitude, but at the same time, she's clearly very concerned with her place in the world and whether she's an agent for good or for bad. And I think like we really wanted the answer to not at the end of the novel just be, oh no, don't worry, she's good. Because the point is not like the way to fight those voices that we have in our own heads of like, am I a good queer or am I a bad queer? Is not to kind of reach the end of the rainbow and realize, oh no, it's okay, I'm one of the good ones. Because it kind of sets up this weird benchmark where it's like you have to be a good one to deserve to be queer almost, or you have to be a good one to deserve to have your love story or deserve to exist in the world the way you want to exist. And we kind of wanted to say, no, that's not relevant. It doesn't matter. And actually, this kind of back and forth struggle of am I a good person or not is not the point. I think all she has is like the options that are in front of her, and what she can do with them. And also what she wants is important and not irrelevant to that question. Yeah.
Exactly. I remember there's a point in the book as well where she's talking about the advice her mum gave her that as brown women in this small conservative town, perfectionism is necessary to their everyday survival. And so it's very powerful in that sense as well, the intersections of queerness and being a woman of color.
Yeah, and I think there's also this really powerful moment quite late in the novel where Jagvi has always been this very like stoic and like straight-faced person who in the face of any danger will be very like grit her teeth and her face will barely move. And Angelina spends the first half of the novel being like, wow, she's so tough, she's so brave, she doesn't even flinch at anything. And I think partway through the novel, as they get to know each other better, there's another scary thing that happens. And Angelina kind of realizes, oh, that's her afraid face. Like that's her scared. And like underneath all of that, her heart is going like a million miles a minute. And it's kind of like seeing the truth in someone for the first time, which I think is also really important for both of them.
Yeah, I think Jacquie's kind of been taught to mask by her mother.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't mean that there's not someone afraid underneath it, essentially. Yeah.
Afraid and messy and vulnerable all the time underneath.
Wonder if we could circle back now to how you work as a collaborative team. And yeah, I guess I was thinking because working with a collaborator is one thing, working with your wife is something else. It sounds wonderful. Do you guys like sit in the same space when you write? Do you have day jobs? Do you spend all your time together? What does it look like?
That's so fun. Sometimes we go out separately.
It does feel like, because I think in people's heads they imagine writers like have a day job and you sit in the same place at the same time all day, and then you knock off and you make dinner together and you'd be spending all your time together.
Yeah. No, so we both work part-time.
Yeah.
I work from home, so I literally am always, you're looking at where I always am. And then yeah, we write, I don't know, this is interesting. We write we have like a little, in Germany it's called a Wintergarten, and it's basically like an indoor balcony. And that's Onja's office. And so she writes from there and I write from the dining room table because I want to be in constant reach of snacks.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we both kind of have our own specific routines, and it will really depend. I think it's kind of, writing for us is a job, and sometimes that means, okay, it's my free day in the week and I need to write, even though I don't really feel like it and it's not really flowing right now. I'm just going to sit and force myself, just do it. And I think that's something that is really a muscle that we both had to kind of develop because that doesn't come easily. At the same time, sometimes you're like, oh my God, I'm so inspired. It's 4 in the morning. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm just going to get up and start writing now, which is what happened when we first started writing, for sure. And so it's always a little bit of like some of one, some of the other. Sometimes it'll be like the evening and one of us will be cooking dinner and the other one be like, I'm just going to write. I'm just going to keep writing. And sometimes both of us will be kind of like plowing away in separate rooms and being like, okay, we just have to make it a little bit further and then we'll be done for the day.
Separate rooms make sense to me because I feel like I would be such a disruptor. I would be the person talking and like distracting constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, so we generally write separately, but then we like it's kind of great because we also have this kind of instant gratification and motivation that the minute a scene is finished, I can like send it to Mick and immediately get her feedback and get her comments and like hear what's working and what's not. So I think a lot of writers have to wait a long time to get any sort of feedback, whereas for us, the feedback is kind of built into the whole process, which I think also is what makes us good editors because we're very used to hearing feedback very fast.
Do you ever
And then
flirt with each other through the text? Are there like in jokes in the text?
I think the main like genre of text that we have is, "Hey, I don't think I can write anymore today," and the other is like, "Yeah, me either."
And that's love.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is get married, be gay, and then write together.
It sounds like a life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I think
that's some really strong writing advice.
Yeah, that's all you need.
no, it's a weird hobby. Like some couples raise children and some build houses, and we create intricate, evil little worlds.
Oh, we've probably got enough time for one more question each, Peyton and Justina, if you've got something you want to ask.
Oh,
I know that's heavy. That's heavy now. There's so much pressure on this question now.
I mean, I was. Oh no, you go ahead.
No,
Peyton.
you go. You go.
Okay. I mean, this is like touching a little bit on something you've already talked about, which is that idea of like queer villains or like the monstrous in like horror. And I feel like a lot of like, I don't know if traditionally is the right word, but traditionally like the other, the racial other or the queer other is so villainized and so monstrous in horror that I find that it's so interesting to have a queer horror novel. Like I like the way that it allows space to actually explore the intricacies of that monstrousness beyond just a base, like a plain fear of the other, of what it feels to be that other and to feel that monstrousness within yourself, while at the same time being in tension with like external, I suppose, monstrousness and external othering factors. And I think that comes across so clearly in both characters. And it's anyway. That's not a question. That's just
more of a
feelings
comment. Now we're
and
at a
thoughts.
festival.
I've got more of a comment. Next, I'm going to ask you for advice on how to publish my specific book.
No, thank you. That's really nice. And I think the other thing is like it makes me think about we have a friend, actually also our British agent, who describes Feast as like a love triangle between two tops and a bottom, essentially. And I think that's like the monster as the villain. I mean, arguably also the monster is less visibly queer than Jagvi and Angelina, who are not unbodied ancient evils, and so it's easier to be like, oh yeah, they're just some lesbians. I don't know what the monster is. I'm frankly afraid to find out. But like there is like the monster is not just their antagonist, it's also this kind of third point on the triangle, and it's it's a mirror to both of them. And I think what's really frightening for both of them is that the terrible things that the monster is doing and the actually evil things that the monster wants also to a certain extent are what they want, like the monster is after consuming their future and completely owning them and possessing them and loving them, and in a weird horrible way that's also sort of monogamy, right? Like that is also like I think when the monster says at one point that it's hard to get to Angelina when Jagvi is holding on to her so hard. And there's this element of like, yeah, Jagvi wants Angelina in a very similar way to the way that the monster wants Angelina. And further things develop later in the book that I won't go into that also kind of show how that's true for Angelina as well. And I think, yeah, there's I don't writing queer horror and reclaiming those narratives for us doesn't mean that I want to like give up the ability to be a monster, because I think we are all monsters sometimes. And I think if you want to write a really honest love story, then you have to lean into that kind of the jealousy and the possessiveness and the desire that all come tangled up in that way. And yeah, sure, then we'll all go and have our therapy sessions after the book. Good self,
Hopefully not with a demon using therapy to take on us.
Actually, but yeah.
think my final question for you would be, what's next? You've kind of hinted that you're already working on something. I'm not sure how much you can tell us. Is it another genre leap? Are you doing something else?
We're a publisher's nightmare.
Yay!
I don't know how much we can talk about it really.
Yeah,
It is
that's okay.
but it's still, I think in the same way that like The View is exhausting and Feast have similarities, I see them as still fitting together on the same chain. And this one is also very queer, and also kind of like Mick says, has a love story at the heart of it. And I guess that's all we can say. I don't know. We're kind of a
That's enough to sell me on the book.
Yeah, we'll all be pre-ordering that one.
We'll
It's
stay
also got
tuned.
lesbians.
yeah.
Nice.
We'd love to thank you for joining us. It's been such a treat. And like I said, our book club this month is doing Feast While You Can. So everyone's going to listen to this interview, and then next week join us for the live book club where we will be doing lots of spoilers. So you've got 1 week to read it, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. Like, we could talk to you for hours. And thank you for the book. It's an amazing book.
So good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, they were such wonderful questions.
Yeah, that
It
was fun.
A delight.
We actually haven't even got through them all. There's about another 2 hours worth of questions we could ask you. So we'd love to have you back for your next book if that's possible.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, and have a lovely day. I hope it went
Thank
smooth
you.
there.
Tell your
Sorry for being
auntie
late.
I say hi, Mick.
That's so funny. I'm literally going to fix her now. Thank you all. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank
So good to
you.
meet you. Thank you. Bye.
Have it. That was Mikaela Clements and Onjuli Datta with Feast While You Can, which is our book club pick. So you all have to be finishing it by next week, people.
Yes. I got through it in a day, so you can too.
I got through it in 2, which is like pretty good when you're sick.
It's so compelling. Like, I feel like once you get into it, it's hard to like tear yourself away.
There
There's
are
so much
probably
character stuff in it. Like, it's I love
there
the
probably are
characters.
some warnings we need to give because it's horror, but we will do that online so that you're aware. I did cry at one point. I had a teary moment at one point, and you'll all know what it is when you get to it. But also I just thought it was like, it's not often you get a horror novel that is also incredibly hot. The spice rating is really high.
Yes. So good.
Yeah, we're not complaining.
In a couple different directions as well. If you read it, you'll know what I mean.
Anyway, back to Smut Month.
Scary Smut Month. I have to say, I'm always impressed when we talk to authors, how intelligent people are when they talk about their own work. I'm just in awe of how much thought goes into these things. Like, and I do wonder what it would be like to write with your partner.
Yeah, same.
I don't think I'd be as peaceful. I think I'd be an awful person to write with.
I feel like generally I can take feedback, but I feel like if it came from a partner, I would be horrible at it.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You just don't get it. You never listen.
I feel like the pressure of having somebody else depending on me to write would kill my ability to do so.
Maybe it'll be good for you. Maybe it'll be better. You never know.
Who knows?
Depends what the reward is if you get the words in on time.
Yeah.
Do I get a demon scene? Can I have a demon scene if I get it in?
I feel like we've created an unofficial series on co-writing this year.
It's true.
We've done a few co-authored books and interviews, which is actually quite fascinating to see all the differences and similarities between how people co-write.
Yeah. It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah. There's always, even though their process is always so different, there's always just this almost inexplicable chemistry that they seem to have that makes it work so well. Like, it's never going to be an issue. They'll just always be able to collaborate on anything.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we've collaborated on academic writing and it's gone really well.
That's true.
We haven't on creative, but we've all sat there in the same document at the same time, writing in the same sentences, and it's been quite good.
chaotic but also kind of fun. And actually it does take some of the pressure off when you're literally writing over the top of each other of like, okay, I'll write this sentence imperfectly, and then someone will come in and start tidying it up behind you, and then someone else will come in,
Yes.
and then the sentence gets cut anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. It really helps you stop being precious about what you're
Yeah.
writing. You're just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, the
Leave
ego
it,
goes.
take it away. It's fine. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you both for reading the book early with me. The rest
was
of
a
them will have
pleasure.
to catch up to us next week. And thanks everyone for listening to us once again. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy
Get
Happy
Halloween.
Halloween. See you
Get
at
ready
book
for
club.
Amy's birthday.
Yes, my
Yeah.
birthday. And we'll see you at book club next week with Feast Where You Can.
Woo.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.